Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive, this time into the world of AI watermarking. You sent over a really fascinating mix of sources for this one. Excerpts from a PhD thesis, research papers, articles. Clearly you're looking to, stay ahead of the curve on this one.
And you're smart to be thinking about it now. The ability of AI to just generate hyper-realistic content. It's no longer sci-fi. We're talking, images, text, audio. And it's honestly getting harder and harder to tell what's actually human-made versus what's AI-generated. And that is exactly where watermarking comes in. It's like a way to tell fact from fiction in the digital age.
Totally. And I'll admit, the whole concept feels a bit like something out of a spy movie to me. I mean, this PhD thesis you sent over, it even mentions watermarking DNA sequences. Like, how wild is that?
Oh, it's pretty cutting-edge stuff. Essentially,
Right.
it's about embedding a hidden signal within the data itself, a mark that's invisible to us but proves its AI origins.
Okay, so not a literal watermark like on a photograph then, but more like a secret code embedded in the ones and zeros. But why is this suddenly so crucial? I mean, AI has been around for a while, right?
True, but we've hit a tipping point, I think. Generative AI is now so powerful it can create things that are practically indistinguishable from human work. One of the research papers you sent over had this crazy statistic. By late 2023, AI had produced as many images as photographers had in over 150 years.
Wait, seriously, that's mind-blowing. That's more images than have existed in almost all of human history just from AI in a single year. No wonder people are worried about, things like deep fakes and AI taking over creative jobs. So if we're practically drowning in AI content, then how does watermarking actually help us?
Okay, think of it like this. Imagine you see a photo online, something really stunning or even controversial. How do you know it's genuine? Watermarking basically acts as a digital fingerprint. It allows us to verify where that content came from.
So it's not just about proving something was made by AI, but potentially even which AI made it. Like, if there's a questionable video going viral, watermarking could help trace it back to the source.
Exactly. And that's why this is about way more than just, cool tech. It has major implications for copyright, authenticity, even combating misinformation. I mean, think about a world where you can't trust what you see or hear online. That's a scary thought.
It's almost like we're entering uncharted territory, right?
Yeah.
And watermarking is this compass to help us navigate it. But how does this actually work? Do they sprinkle digital glitter into the AI code or something?
It's a bit more complex than glitter, though I do love the image. There are two main approaches: embedding the watermark during the AI's training or adding it afterwards.
So with the first one, the AI learns to watermark everything it creates right from the get-go.
Exactly. The PhD thesis mentions this technique called stable signature for images. It's like teaching the AI to leave its mark on everything it produces.
That's clever. So it's like the AI has its own signature style that's invisible to us but detectable by computers.
Precisely. And the other approach, what we call post hoc watermarking, is like adding a stamp after the AI is finished creating something. Both approaches have their pros and cons, which we can, get into a bit later.
Got it. But before we get too deep into the technical stuff, are there any real-world examples of this happening already? It all sounds a bit theoretical so far.
It's actually very quickly moving from theory to practice. Some companies are already watermarking text generated by large language models, those AIs that can write articles and code like humans can. And image watermarking is being tested by stock photo sites and even some digital art platforms.
So it's not some far-off futuristic concept. It's happening right now. What are some of the biggest benefits that people should be excited about?
Well, one that immediately springs to mind is combating deepfakes. Imagine someone creates a video that falsely depicts you saying or doing something harmful. With watermarking, you could prove that it's not real and even trace it back to its source.
So it's almost like a defense mechanism against malicious AI use,
Yeah.
like an early warning system for digital deception. It's huge, especially as AI gets more and more sophisticated.
Absolutely. And for creators, watermarking could be a total game changer for copyright protection. If an AI copies your artwork or music, a watermark can prove you're the original creator. It's like having built-in proof of ownership in the digital age.
That's super interesting. It really seems like AI watermarking has the potential to change how we create, share, and even trust information online.
Mm.
But is it a foolproof solution? What are some of the challenges?
It's definitely not a silver bullet.
Yeah.
One of the big questions is robustness, how well the watermark survives if someone tries to, edit or manipulate the content.
Right, because if someone can just easily remove the watermark, it defeats the whole purpose.
Exactly. There's also the challenge of security. making sure the watermark itself can't be easily forged or hacked. One of the research papers you sent over actually highlighted how some current watermarking methods are vulnerable to attack. For example, simply compressing an image can sometimes remove the signal.
So it's an ongoing battle then. As watermarking gets more advanced, so do the techniques for trying to circumvent it.
Precisely. But even with those challenges, there's no doubt that AI watermarking is going to be a major player in the future of AI. And some of the advancements being explored are truly mind-blowing.
Okay, now you've really got me intrigued. What are some of these next-level advancements you're talking about?
Well, one of the most exciting ones is something called semantic watermarking. Instead of changing pixels in an image or letters in text, this technique embeds the watermark into the meaning of the content itself.
Wait, hold on. You're saying you can watermark the meaning of something? That sounds straight out of science fiction. How's that even possible?
It's one of the most fascinating areas of research right now. Instead of changing the words an AI writes, imagine subtly influencing the style in which it writes or the message it conveys. That's the power of semantic watermarking.
That's incredible. So it's not just about hiding something in the data, it's about weaving it into the content itself. But doesn't that raise some ethical questions, especially if it's being used to influence how AI creates things?
You bring up a really important point, and it's one that researchers are actively grappling with. The implications of this technology are huge, and we need to be having these conversations as AI becomes more powerful.
It's definitely a lot to unpack, but before we jump into those ethical considerations, let's dig a bit deeper into how some of these more technical aspects of watermarking work. You ready to get a little geeky with me?
Always up for a challenge. Let's dive in. Welcome back. Ready to get into some of the more technical details of how AI watermarking actually works.
I'm game, but our listener might not be a coding whiz. Maybe we can try to keep those analogies coming. Speaking of which, that PhD thesis you sent over had one that really stuck with me. They talked about AI watermarking being like hiding a secret message within the structure of a building. So even if you renovate or repaint it, the message remains.
It's a great analogy. It highlights how important it is for these watermarks to be robust, resistant to manipulation. But before we get to that, let's break down some of the basic mechanics.
Okay, walk me through it.
So, at its core, AI watermarking is like a communication system, much like sending a coded message. There's what we call an encoder that embeds the watermark, the message, into the content, and a decoder that retrieves that message later.
Okay, so the encoder is like a spy hiding microfilm in a hollowed-out book, and the decoder is the agent who knows how to find it.
Exactly. And the book in this case could be an image, a piece of text, or even the AI model itself.
Wait, hold on. You can watermark the AI model itself? That's blowing my mind. How does that work?
It's one of the most exciting areas of research. Imagine this, exploiting the actual structure of a large language model to hide a watermark within its artificial neurons, the connections that make up its brain. It's almost like embedding a secret code into how the AI thinks.
So instead of changing the words the AI generates, you're tweaking how it processes information.
Precisely. And what's so cool is that the output, the text the AI produces, remains virtually unchanged. But the watermark is hidden within its inner workings, like a signature in its cognitive processes.
That's wild. But why even go through all that trouble? Wouldn't it just be easier to watermark the text directly?
Well, it's a matter of strategy. Watermarking the model offers some unique advantages, especially when dealing with open source AI. Think about it. Anyone can download and use these models, so you can't control how the output is generated.
Ah, I see. So even if someone takes your open source AI and uses it to create tons of content, you can still prove it came from your model. It's a way to protect your IP even when the AI is out in the wild.
Exactly. It's like giving the AI a DNA fingerprint, so to speak, making it way harder for someone to steal your work and claim it as their own.
Makes sense. You mentioned different types of watermarks earlier. One I remember reading about is something called zero-bit watermarking. Sounded kind of mysterious.
It's a pretty clever technique. It's about proving AI involvement without actually embedding a specific message. It's like a simple yes-no answer. Was this made by AI or not?
So it's not about tracing it back to a specific source, but more about detecting AI's fingerprints in general, like knowing a piece of art was made with AI even if we don't know which AI.
Exactly. It often relies on statistical analysis, looking for subtle patterns that reveal the AI's involvement. Think of it like analyzing the brush strokes to see if it was made by a human or a robot.
Gotcha. So zero-bit watermarking is a broad detector, and the other types of watermarks are more detailed fingerprints.
A perfect analogy. And the messages those detailed watermarks contain can vary quite a bit.
What kind of information are we talking about?
It could be, a unique ID for the AI model, information about who trained it, even timestamps and metadata about the content creation.
So it's like attaching a digital birth certificate to the content to prove it's authentic.
Exactly. And the cool part is that it's completely invisible to us. It's all encoded in the data itself.
I see why this could be so powerful. But let's be real here. None of this matters if the watermark can just be easily removed, right? What's being done to guarantee the security of these watermarks?
You've hit on the million-dollar question there, both literally and figuratively. The security and robustness of AI watermarks are really at the forefront of research right now.
One potential solution that I thought was interesting was that semantic watermarking idea that was mentioned in the PhD thesis. That sounds like it would make the watermarks super resilient.
Semantic watermarking is definitely one of the most promising approaches. Instead of altering, superficial aspects of the content, it embeds the watermark in the meaning itself, making it much harder to remove without completely changing what the message or image is about.
Okay, help me wrap my head around this. Can you give me a concrete example of how semantic watermarking might actually work?
Imagine an AI generates a poem about someone walking in the woods. With semantic watermarking, instead of changing the words, you might subtly alter the mood or the theme. Maybe introduce a sense of melancholy or mystery, all according to a predetermined code. The meaning, the walk in the woods, remains the same. But those subtle shifts encode the watermark.
So it's kind of like those optical illusions where you have to look at something a certain way to see the hidden image.
That's a great way to visualize it. But even with a technique like semantic watermarking, there are still challenges. It's always a back and forth between those developing watermarking methods and those who are trying to break them.
So it's not enough to just create a strong watermark.
Yeah.
You have to anticipate how someone might try to attack it
Hmm.
and build in defenses against those attacks.
Absolutely. It's a constant game of cat and mouse.
It sounds like there are some real challenges when it comes to guaranteeing that these watermarks are robust enough.
There are. And the PhD thesis highlighted one particularly tricky challenge with text watermarking. It's something called deduplication, and it's all about how AI generates language.
Deduplication. Okay, I'm lost. Analogy time.
Imagine trying to watermark a long article that an AI generated. The watermark is spread throughout the text, right? But what happens if the AI repeats certain phrases or sentences to create coherent text?
I see. You could end up with copies of the same watermark, which would weaken the signal and make it harder to detect.
Precisely. And it gets even more complicated when you consider how large language models work. They don't just put words together randomly. They use attention, which means they look at the whole context of what they've written. This makes it even harder to ensure that the watermark segments are unique.
So you have to look at how the AI is thinking and how it's adding those watermarks in.
That's the heart of it. And it's one of the reasons why researchers are always developing new algorithms to prevent this unintended duplication. It's like a game of chess, trying to stay a step ahead.
So ensuring the watermarks are robust is a constant balancing act. You have to really understand both AI and cryptography.
Exactly. And on top of robustness, there's another crucial factor: the impact watermarking might have on the quality of the content.
Right, because if you're forcing the AI to include these hidden messages, it might start to sound strange and unnatural, like someone trying to talk with their mouth full.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot between making sure the watermark is robust and secure while maintaining the quality of the AI's output. This is something researchers are tackling head on, and it will only become more important as AI content becomes more widespread.
We're only scratching the surface of this issue.
We are. But hopefully, this is giving you a better understanding of how AI watermarking works and some of the challenges involved.
And it's made me think about how this technology will affect us moving forward.
Absolutely. Speaking of the future, let's explore how AI watermarking might actually impact our daily lives in the coming years. So are you ready to step back from all the technical stuff and look at how this might impact you, the listener, in your everyday life?
For sure. I think after that last part, my brain needs a break from all the algorithms and code. But seriously, this all sounds very sci-fi. How is AI watermarking actually going to affect the average person?
Well, just think about all the content you consume every day. News articles, social media posts, images, videos, music. It's a never-ending stream.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. Way more content than I care to admit.
Exactly. And as AI gets even better at creating this stuff, it's going to be harder and harder to tell what's real and what's not.
So you're saying that AI watermarking could become like essential for just using the internet, for knowing what's real and what's fake.
Imagine reading a news article and immediately knowing if it was written by a person or by AI, or watching a viral video and being certain if it's authentic or a deepfake.
That would be a game changer, especially with how fast misinformation spreads online these days. It's almost like watermarking could become a basic digital skill, like knowing how to spot those scam emails.
Exactly. And what about creative industries? Watermarking could really help artists protect their work, making sure they get credit and get paid, even if AI is used in the process.
That's important. One of the articles you sent mentioned that some artists are already worried about AI, stealing their style and their work.
Yeah, it's a valid concern, but AI watermarking could help with that. It would basically create a link between the creator and their work that's really hard to break.
So AI watermarking is like setting some ground rules for the digital age, establishing some trust in a world that's becoming more and more reliant on AI.
That's a great way to put it. It's about using AI ethically and making sure we don't lose sight of human creativity.
But let's be realistic here. Not everyone's going to follow the rules. There will always be those who try to, exploit technology for bad stuff.
Unfortunately, that's true. Just like any powerful tool, AI watermarking can be used for good or bad. We've already seen it happen with fake news and things like that.
So what can we do to prevent that? Is it just about making the watermarks super strong and secure?
That's definitely a big part of it. Researchers are constantly developing better techniques to stay ahead of the curve, but technology alone isn't enough.
You're right. We need to be thinking about the ethics, the laws, and how to educate people about this technology.
I completely agree. We need to be having conversations about the good and the bad and figure out how we can make sure AI watermarking benefits everyone.
And that brings up another point, standardization. One of the papers mentioned that we don't have any universal standards for watermarking yet. It's like everyone's speaking a different language.
That's a great point. Imagine if every country had its own currency. Global trade would be impossible. The same thing applies here. We need to develop some common standards that everyone can agree on.
So are we talking about like an international treaty or something? It seems like this will take cooperation between governments, tech companies, researchers.
It'll be a challenge for sure, but it's absolutely necessary. And it's already starting to happen. There are groups working on this right now.
That's good to hear. But even with standards, how do we know everyone will actually use them and use them responsibly?
That's where things get tricky. It might take a combination of laws, industry guidelines, and just making people more aware.
So it's not enough to have the technology you have to build a whole structure around it.
Exactly. We need a culture of responsible AI development and use, where everyone values transparency and accountability.
It's definitely a lot to think about. But it's exciting that we're shaping the future of technology.
It is. That's why it's so important to be having these conversations. We need to make sure that AI benefits humanity.
Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive. And honestly, I'm feeling a bit of both awe and a bit of nervousness about what the future holds.
I think that's a very normal reaction. AI watermarking is a powerful tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. But I think if we are thoughtful and we talk about these issues openly, we can use this to make the digital world more trustworthy.
And for everyone listening, we hope this deep dive has given you a good understanding of AI watermarking and how it will impact all of us in the years to come.
It's been great sharing this with you.
Remember to always think critically about what you see online. Be skeptical, stay curious, and we'll see you next time.